The stagecoach wheels hit a rut so hard that Eleanor Kendrick's head slammed against the wooden interior, and she bit her tongue tasting copper as the driver shouted apologies that were swallowed by the Arizona dust storm swirling around them like an angry spirit. It was 1878, and she had been traveling for 3 weeks from Boston to this God-forsaken territory, running from a past that had taught her the hard way that people were liars, cheaters, and worse when given half a chance. The landscape outside her window looked as unforgiving as her memories. All red rock and skeletal cacti reaching toward a sky bleached white by the merciless sun. When the stagecoach finally lurched to a stop in Wickenburg, Eleanor climbed down on shaking legs, her emerald traveling dress coated in a fine layer of rust-colored dust. The town was smaller than she had imagined, just a collection of weathered buildings clinging to existence in the desert heat. Main Street stretched before her like a promise that might be broken, lined with a saloon, a general store, a telegraph office, and what appeared to be a boarding house with faded paint peeling off its sign. "Miss Kendrick." A heavy-set woman with kind eyes and work-worn hands approached her. "I'm Mrs. Patterson. Your uncle wrote to me about your arrival. I run the boarding house." Eleanor managed a tight smile, gripping her carpet bag closer. "Thank you for accommodating me on such short notice. Your uncle was a good man before he passed. We were all sorry to lose him. Come along now, let me get you settled. You must be exhausted from that journey." The boarding house room was sparse but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the street. Mrs. Patterson explained that Eleanor's uncle had left her a small property on the edge of town, a modest house with a few acres that he had been working as a vegetable garden to supply the local restaurants and homes. It was not much, but it was hers, and that meant everything to a woman who had fled Boston with nothing but what she could carry. That evening, Eleanor forced herself to walk through town despite her exhaustion, wanting to understand what her new life would look like. The air had cooled slightly with the sunset, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that she had never seen back east. She passed the saloon, where piano music and rough laughter spilled into the street, and continued toward the general store, thinking she should purchase supplies for tomorrow. She was studying the items in the window when she heard the commotion. Raised voices, the sound of something crashing, and then a gunshot that made her heart stop. Eleanor pressed herself against the storefront, every instinct screaming at her to run, to hide, to disappear the way she had learned to do when her father came home drunk and violent, the way she had done when Thomas Ashford had shown his true colors after their engagement. "Put the gun down, Rawlings." The voice was calm, steady, almost gentle despite the danger crackling in the air. "You have had too much to drink, and you are going to do something you will regret come morning." Eleanor peered around the corner. A man stood in the middle of the street, hands held loosely at his sides, facing another man who was swaying and waving a pistol erratically. The calm man was tall and lean, wearing dusty work clothes and a hat that shadowed his face. His stance was relaxed but ready, like a predator that knew exactly how dangerous it was. "He cheated me," the drunk man, Rawlings, shouted. "Took my money at cards. Sam runs an honest game, you know that. You are just having a bad streak." The tall man took a step closer. "Give me the gun." "Go sleep it off. Tomorrow we can talk about it when your head is clear." "You always take his side, Trent. You always think you know everything." "I know that if you shoot someone tonight, you will hang. Is that what you want, to leave your wife and those 2 little boys without a father?" The mention of his family seemed to penetrate the alcoholic haze. Rawlings lowered the gun slightly, confusion crossing his face. The tall man, Trent, moved forward smoothly and took the weapon from his hand with practiced ease, then guided the drunk man toward a bench outside the saloon. Eleanor realized she had been holding her breath. She let it out slowly, her heart still racing. This was the reality of the West, she reminded herself. Violence could erupt at any moment, just like it had in Boston, just like it had everywhere she had ever been. Trust was a luxury she could not afford. She hurried back to the boarding house, skipping the general store entirely. Mrs. Patterson was in the kitchen, and Eleanor asked if she might have some bread and cheese in her room, claiming exhaustion. The older woman clucked sympathetically and prepared a simple plate, which Eleanor carried upstairs with shaking hands. The next morning arrived too bright and too hot. Eleanor dressed in her most practical outfit, a brown skirt and white blouse, and tied her dark hair back severely. She needed to see her uncle's property, to understand what she had inherited and what work would be required. Mrs. Patterson gave her directions and offered to have someone escort her, but Eleanor declined. She had learned to rely on herself and no one else. The walk took about 20 minutes, leading her past the last buildings of town and into the desert landscape dotted with mesquite and creosote bushes. The house, when she found it, was small but solidly built, with a porch that sagged slightly on one side. Behind it stretched the garden plot, now overgrown with weeds since her uncle's death 3 months prior. A well stood near the house, and beyond that, a small barn that looked like it might collapse in the next strong wind. Eleanor set down her bag and walked through the property, mentally cataloging everything that needed attention. The list was overwhelming. She had some money saved from her years working as a seamstress in Boston, but it would not stretch far. She would need to get this garden productive again, and quickly, if she hoped to support herself. She was examining the well, trying to determine if the rope and bucket were sound when she heard hoofbeats. Eleanor turned to see a horse and rider approaching, and her stomach tightened with instinctive wariness. As they drew closer, she recognized the tall man from the previous night, the one who had talked down the drunk with the gun. He dismounted with easy grace and removed his hat, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind but perhaps only in his late 20s, with blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His dark blonde hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar. "Morning, miss. I heard someone had inherited old Henry's place. Figured I would ride out and introduce myself. I am Trent Dawson. My property borders yours on the western side." Eleanor kept her expression neutral, her hands clasped in front of her. "Eleanor Kendrick. Henry was my uncle. He was a good man. Taught me a lot about growing vegetables in this climate when I first arrived 5 years ago. I am sorry for your loss." His voice was sincere, the same calm tone she had heard last night. "Thank you." She did not elaborate, did not explain that she had never met her uncle, that he was her father's brother who had left Boston long before she was born, that she had only written to him in desperation when she needed to escape. Trent seemed to sense her reticence. He gestured toward the garden. "That is a lot of work for one person. The desert does not forgive neglect, I am aware." Eleanor lifted her chin. "I can manage. I am sure you can." There was no condescension in his voice, just acceptance. "But if you need advice on what grows best this time of year, or where to get good seeds, or how to keep the javelinas from destroying everything you plant, I am happy to help. Neighbors should look out for each other. I appreciate the offer, but I prefer to figure things out myself." The words came out harder than she intended, sharpened by years of learning that help always came with strings attached, with expectations and demands and eventual betrayal. Trent studied her for a long moment, those blue eyes seeing more than she wanted them to. "All right then. But the offer stands. My place is about a mile west, just follow the property line. You will see the barn and the house beyond it. He put his hat back on and mounted his horse with the same fluid motion, then paused. One more thing. There are some wild horses that come through this area to get to the water source on my land. They are not dangerous, but they can knock down fences if they get spooked. Just thought you should know. Eleanor nodded stiffly, and he rode away, leaving her standing in the dust wondering why she felt almost disappointed that he had not pushed harder, had not tried to charm or manipulate or insert himself into her life the way men always did. Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor threw herself into the work with a determination born of desperation and stubbornness in equal measure. She cleared weeds until her hands were blistered and bleeding. She patched the porch as best she could with scavenged wood. She hauled water from the well until her shoulders ached. The general store owner, a thin man named Mr. Cooper, sold her seeds and gave her grudging advice on planting times. Mrs. Patterson brought her meals when she forgot to eat, clucking over how thin she was getting. Eleanor saw Trent occasionally in town, always from a distance. He would nod politely if their eyes met, but he never approached her again, never tried to force his help on her. She told herself she was relieved. She told herself his respect for her boundaries was exactly what she wanted. But late at night, lying in her narrow bed in her uncle's house with the coyotes singing in the distance, she thought about how easily he had disarmed that drunk man, how his voice had been firm but kind, how he had mentioned the man's wife and children to bring him back to reason. She thought about the way he had looked at her, really looked, as if he was trying to understand rather than judge. She pushed those thoughts away. Trust was earned, not given, and she had no reason to trust anyone in this town, least of all a cowboy who probably wanted something from her eventually. The first real test came on a Tuesday morning in late June. Eleanor had successfully planted rows of tomatoes, squash, beans, and peppers, and tiny green shoots were just beginning to emerge from the soil like promises. She was carrying water from the well when she heard the thunder of hooves, dozens of them, and then saw the dust cloud rising in the distance. The wild horses burst into view moments later, a magnificent herd of perhaps 20 animals, all flowing manes and powerful muscles. They were heading straight for her property, straight for her garden, and Eleanor's heart dropped into her stomach. She ran toward them, waving her arms and shouting, trying to turn them aside, but they were too fast, too many, too wild. She was about to be trampled when a rope sailed through the air, and a horseman charged between her and the herd, turning the lead mare aside with expert precision. Trent Dawson rode like he was part of the horse, guiding the herd away from Eleanor's garden and toward the open desert. Another rider appeared from the opposite direction, helping to funnel the horses away from the property. Within minutes, the crisis was over. The herd had passed through without destroying her carefully planted garden. Eleanor stood frozen, her heart hammering, adrenaline making her shake. Trent rode back to her, his horse dancing sideways, still excited from the chase. "You all right?" he called down. "I am fine." Her voice was not as steady as she wanted. "Thank you. You saved my garden." He dismounted, ground tying his horse with casual confidence. "You could have been killed." "What were you thinking, trying to turn a herd by yourself?" The criticism sparked her anger, a familiar defense mechanism. "I was thinking that I have worked for 2 weeks to get those plants in the ground, and I was not about to watch them be destroyed." Better destroyed plants than a destroyed woman. His voice was sharp now, the first time she had heard real heat in it. "You need to be smarter than that if you are going to survive out here." "I do not need you to tell me how to survive." Eleanor crossed her arms, glaring at him. "I have been taking care of myself for a long time. Clearly not in the desert. Not around wild horses and flash floods and rattlesnakes and 100 other things that will kill you before you realize you are in danger. He took a breath, visibly calming himself. Look, I am not trying to insult you, but this is not Boston or wherever you came from. The rules are different here. How do you know I am from Boston? Mrs. Patterson mentioned it. Small town, people talk. He softened his tone. I know you do not want help, you have made that clear. But accepting help is not the same as being weak, it is just being practical. The other rider had approached during their conversation, a younger man with a friendly face and red hair. Everything all right, Trent? Fine, Rusty. Thanks for the assist. This is Miss Kendrick, Henry's niece. Eleanor, this is Rusty McFarlane. He works on my ranch. Rusty tipped his hat. Pleasure, miss. Those horses have been more active than usual this summer. We have been trying to keep them away from the properties, but they are unpredictable. Eleanor nodded, feeling foolish now for her outburst. These men had just saved her from serious injury, possibly death, and she had responded with anger. It was not their fault that she had learned to see ulterior motives in every kind gesture, to expect pain whenever she let her guard down. Thank you both, she managed. I appreciate your help. Trent studied her for a moment, then seemed to come to some decision. Rusty, head back to the ranch. I am going to check Miss Kendrick's fence line, make sure those horses did not damage anything we need to repair before they come back through. Sure thing, boss. Rusty rode off with a cheerful wave. Trent turned to Eleanor. That is, if you will allow me to check your fence. I know you prefer to handle things yourself, but this is something that benefits both of us. Those horses come through here to get to the water on my property. If your fence is damaged, they will just make it worse next time. It was logical, reasonable, and stripped of any implication that she could not handle it herself. Eleanor found herself nodding. All right, thank you. They walked the perimeter of her property together, Trent pointing out weak spots in the fence and places where posts needed to be reinforced. He talked about the land, about how the seasons worked here, about the monsoon rains that would come in July and August, and could turn the dry washes into raging torrents in minutes. Your uncle used to store sandbags for the monsoon season, Trent mentioned as they examined a section of fence near the wash. The water can come up fast and threaten the foundation of the house. You will want to be prepared. Eleanor made mental notes, adding to the endless list of things she needed to learn and do. It was overwhelming, but she refused to let that show. I will take care of it. I know you will. He said it simply, as if it were fact, and something in her chest loosened slightly. They worked in silence for a while, walking the fence line. Finally, Eleanor spoke, the question forcing itself out despite her better judgment. Why are you helping me? What do you want in return? Trent stopped walking and turned to face her fully. His expression was serious, open. I do not want anything in return. I am helping because it is the right thing to do, and because your uncle was kind to me when I needed it, and because out here, neighbors depend on each other. That is how we survive. Everyone wants something. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. What happened to you? He asked quietly. Who hurt you so badly that you cannot accept simple kindness? Eleanor felt her throat tighten. That is none of your business. You are right, it is not. He held her gaze. But I will tell you this. Whatever you went through, whoever taught you that people cannot be trusted, they are not here. You are in Wickenburg now. We take care of our own. No strings, no expectations, just community. I have heard that before. It is never true. Then I guess I will just have to prove it to you. There was a challenge in his voice now, but also something gentler, something that sounded almost like a promise. Eleanor looked away, not trusting herself to respond. The desert stretched around them, vast and indifferent, and she felt suddenly very small and very alone despite his presence beside her. "I do not trust easily," she finally said, the confession torn from somewhere deep inside. Trent was quiet for a moment, then replied with that same steady certainty she was beginning to recognize as fundamental to who he was. "Good. Trust should always be earned first." The words settled into her like seeds finding soil. She looked at him, really looked, and saw genuine respect in his eyes, saw patience and understanding and none of the manipulation she had expected. It terrified her almost as much as the wild horses had. "How do you earn it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "By showing up. By keeping my word. By being the same person every single day, not just when I want something from you." He smiled slightly. "By proving through actions, not words, that I mean what I say. And if I never trust you, then I will still help when you need it, and I will still be a good neighbor, and I will still respect your boundaries." He shrugged. Trust is not a requirement for decency. Something cracked in Eleanor's carefully constructed walls, just a hairline fracture, but it was there. She took a shaky breath. "The fence is weak near the barn. If you meant what you said about helping, I could use assistance repairing it before those horses come through again." Trent's smile widened, genuine and warm. "I meant what I said. I can bring supplies and tools tomorrow morning, if that works for you." Tomorrow morning would be acceptable. They finished walking the fence line as the sun climbed higher and the heat became oppressive. When they reached her house again, Trent mounted his horse with that same easy grace. "One more thing," he said, looking down at her. "There is a town gathering this Saturday evening, just a simple meal and music. Families come, everyone brings food. You should come. It would be a good way to meet people, establish yourself." Eleanor's instinct was to refuse, to hide in her safe solitude, but she thought about his words, about earning trust through action, about being part of a community. "Maybe," she heard herself say, "I will think about it. That is all I ask." He tipped his hat and rode away, leaving her standing in the sun wondering who she was becoming in this wild place. This Arizona territory that felt like a different world from everything she had known. True to his word, Trent arrived the next morning with a wagon full of fence posts, wire, and tools. He brought Rusty with him, and the three of them worked through the morning, replacing weak sections and reinforcing posts. Eleanor held posts steady while Trent hammered them into the hard ground, and she learned to stretch wire tight while Rusty secured it. They worked well together, falling into a rhythm that surprised her. Trent explained what he was doing and why, teaching her so she could maintain the fence herself in the future. He did not talk down to her or assume she could not understand. He just shared his knowledge as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Around noon, Eleanor brought out water and bread with cheese that Mrs. Patterson had sent. They sat in the shade of the porch, and Rusty told stories about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about following a girl to Arizona only to have her marry someone else, about deciding to stay anyway because he liked the territory. "You ever regret it?" Eleanor asked. "Staying for someone who did not choose you?" Rusty considered the question seriously. "At first, yeah. I felt like a fool, but then I realized I was not just staying for her. I was staying for the person I was becoming here, for the life I was building. She was just the catalyst. Sometimes we need something to push us toward the change we were meant to make anyway." Eleanor thought about that, about how she had fled Boston to escape Thomas Ashford and her father, but maybe she had also been running toward something, toward the possibility of becoming someone new. "What about you, boss?" Rusty grinned at Trent. "What brought you to Arizona, same as everyone else, looking for a fresh start?" Trent's voice was neutral, but Eleanor caught something beneath it, some old pain that he kept carefully contained. running from something or toward something? She asked before she could stop herself. Trent met her eyes. Both. I left Montana after my father died. He drank himself to death over 10 years, slowly destroying everything our family had built. I could not watch it anymore, could not save him from himself. So I took what little money was left and came here to start over. The honesty in his voice stunned her. I am sorry. Me too. But I learned something watching him destroy himself. I learned that you cannot help people who do not want to be helped. You can only control yourself, your own choices. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and build something new. He paused. I suspect you have learned similar lessons. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away furiously. She was not going to cry, not here, not now. But the understanding in his voice, the way he saw her without her having to explain, it was almost too much to bear. My father was violent, she said quietly, the words emerging like prisoners finally freed. And the man I was engaged to, Thomas Ashford, he seemed so different at first. Charming, kind, everything my father was not. But after we were engaged, he started showing his true nature, controlling, possessive, cruel when he did not get his way. I realized I was about to marry a different version of the same man I had been trying to escape my whole life. What did you do? Rusty asked gently. I broke the engagement. Thomas did not take it well. He spread rumors about me, destroyed my reputation, made it impossible for me to work or live peacefully in Boston. So when my uncle's lawyer contacted me about the inheritance, I saw it as a chance to disappear, to become someone new somewhere no one knew my history. She looked at both of them. I came here expecting the same darkness I had always known. I came here ready to fight and defend and survive. I did not come here expecting kindness. But kindness is what you deserve, Trent said firmly. What you have always deserved. The fact that the men in your life failed to give it to you says everything about them and nothing about you. The simple conviction in his words broke something loose in Eleanor's chest. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and they sat in silence for a while, the desert heat pressing down on them but the shade offering respite. They finished the fence that afternoon, and when Trent and Rusty prepared to leave, Eleanor found herself reluctant to see them go. The house would be so quiet after their voices and laughter had filled the air. About Saturday, she said, as Trent was loading tools into the wagon. The town gathering. What time does it start? His smile was brilliant. Around 6 in the evening when it cools down a bit, behind the church. Just bring whatever food you want to share or bring nothing if you prefer. You will be welcome either way. I will be there, she said, and meant it. The next few days passed in a blur of work and unexpected anticipation. Eleanor tended her garden, watched her plants grow with almost maternal pride, and prepared a berry pie for the gathering using preserves she bought from the general store. She told herself she was not nervous, that this was just a practical step toward integrating into the community. But her hands shook slightly as she dressed on Saturday evening in her best dress, a deep blue that brought out her eyes. The gathering was already in full swing when she arrived, families clustered on blankets and rough benches, children running and playing, the smell of food filling the air. A fiddler played lively music, and several couples were dancing on a makeshift floor of smoothed boards. Eleanor stood at the edge, feeling suddenly overwhelmed and out of place. Then Mrs. Patterson spotted her and bustled over, taking her arm warmly. Eleanor, dear, I am so glad you came. Let me introduce you around. The next hour was a whirlwind of names and faces. There was Sam, who ran the saloon and apparently an honest card game, his wife Martha, who taught the few children in town. There was Dr. William Harrison and his daughter Catherine, who helped him with his medical practice. There was the blacksmith, the telegraph operator, the owner of the small hotel. Everyone was friendly, welcoming, curious about her but not invasive. She saw Trent across the gathering, talking with a group of ranchers, but he did not approach her. Instead, he caught her eye and smiled, giving her space to navigate this social situation on her own terms. She appreciated that more than she could express. As the evening wore on, and the sky darkened to indigo studded with more stars than she had ever seen, Eleanor found herself relaxing. These people were not sophisticated like Boston society. They were rougher, more direct, but there was a genuineness to them that she had never encountered before. They said what they meant. They helped each other without keeping score. They built lives in the desert through sheer determination and community support. She was watching the dancers, tapping her foot to the music, when Trent appeared at her side. "Would you like to dance?" Eleanor's immediate instinct was to refuse, to maintain her distance. But then she thought about trust being earned, about taking small risks, about the person she wanted to become in this new place. "I do not know how to dance like this. We did formal dances in Boston, but nothing like this. It is easy. I will teach you." He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His hand was calloused and warm, his grip firm but gentle. He led her to the dance floor and showed her the simple steps, turning her and guiding her through the movements with easy confidence. Eleanor stumbled at first, hyper-aware of his hand at her waist, of how close they were, of the way his blue eyes caught the lantern light. "Relax," he murmured. "You are trying too hard. Just feel the music and let yourself move." She took a breath and tried to let go of her rigid control. Gradually, she found the rhythm, found herself actually enjoying the dance, the music, the way Trent moved with her as if they had done this 100 times before. "You are a natural," he said as the song ended and another began, faster and more lively. Other couples whirled around them, and Eleanor found herself laughing, actually laughing, as Trent spun her and she let the joy of the moment consume her. When they finally stopped, breathless and flushed, he smiled down at her. "See, not so terrible, trusting someone to lead for a while." "Only because you did not step on my feet or spin me into the crowd," she replied, but there was no bite in her words. They walked to the edge of the gathering where it was quieter and stood looking up at the vast expanse of stars. "It is so different here," Eleanor said softly. "In Boston, you can barely see the stars, but here they seem close enough to touch. That is one of the things I love about the desert. It makes you feel small, but in a good way. Like your problems are not as overwhelming as they seemed because you are just one small piece of something so much bigger." "Is that how you dealt with your father's death?" "By putting it in perspective, partly. Mostly I dealt with it by accepting that I could not change what happened, only what I did next. Grief is like the desert, I think. It is harsh and unforgiving, but if you respect it and learn to live with it, you can find beauty there too." Eleanor thought about her own grief, for the childhood she never had, for the trust that had been beaten out of her, for the woman she might have been if circumstances had been different. "I think I am tired of just surviving," she said quietly. "I think I want to learn how to live." Trent turned to face her fully. "Then that is what you will do, and I will help if you will let me. Not because you cannot do it alone, but because everything is easier and more joyful when you do not have to be alone." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "Why do you care?" "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave enough to cross half a country to start over. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever met. I know you protect yourself because you have had to, but underneath all that armor, you are kind. I saw it in the way you thanked Rusty for helping with the fence, in the way you listen when people talk, in the way you look at your garden like it holds all your dreams." He paused. And I know what it is like to be alone, to feel like you cannot rely on anyone. I do not want that for you. I do not want that for anyone. Eleanor felt something shift inside her, some fundamental change in the landscape of her heart. This man, this cowboy who talked down drunks and built fences and danced under the stars, he was showing her through every action that maybe, just maybe, trust was possible. That maybe not everyone would hurt her. That maybe she could open her heart without it being destroyed. I would like that, she whispered. I would like to let you help. I would like to try. His smile was incandescent. Then we will try. Together. One day at a time, earning that trust through actions, building something real. They stayed at the gathering until late, talking with townsfolk and laughing at stories and eating too much food. When Trent finally walked Eleanor back to her house under the stars, leading his horse behind them, the night was cool and perfect. At her porch, he stopped and looked down at her. "Thank you for giving me a chance," he said simply. "Thank you for being patient enough to deserve one," she replied. He tipped his hat and rode into the darkness, and Eleanor went inside feeling lighter than she had in years, feeling like maybe, possibly, she was finally home. The summer progressed with monsoon rains that turned the desert green and brought Eleanor's garden to flourishing life. Trent was there often, helping her build channels to direct water away from her house, teaching her to read the sky for storms, showing her which plants needed more attention. But he also gave her space, let her work independently, trusted her growing competence. They fell into an easy rhythm of friendship that slowly, carefully, began to deepen into something more. Trent would bring her vegetables from his garden that ripened earlier than hers. Eleanor would make bread and bring it to his ranch. They would sit on her porch in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing, watching the sun paint the sky in impossible colors. Eleanor learned about his ranch, about the cattle he was building his herd with, about his dreams of expanding and making it one of the most successful operations in the territory. She told him about her years as a seamstress, about the beautiful dresses she had made for wealthy women who never saw her as fully human, about her love of reading and how she missed having access to books. A week later, Trent showed up with a crate full of books. "I sent away for them," he explained, looking almost shy. "It took a while to arrive, but the catalog had a good selection. I was not sure what you liked, so I got a variety. If you do not like them, we can trade them in for something else." Eleanor looked through the crate with tears in her eyes. There were novels and poetry, histories and agricultural guides, everything she could have wanted. "This is too much," she whispered. "It is not enough," he replied firmly. "You deserve beautiful things, Eleanor. You deserve joy and knowledge and every good thing this world has to offer. Let me give you this. Let me show you that not every gift comes with strings." She threw her arms around him impulsively, hugging him tight, and felt him stiffen in surprise before his arms came around her, holding her carefully as if she were something precious. They stood like that for a long moment, and when Eleanor pulled back, she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch, something tender and fierce and full of longing. "Trent," she started, but was not sure how to finish. "I am falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I know it is too soon. I know you need time, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it. Every day I am with you, I fall a little more. The way you face challenges without complaining, the way you laugh when something delights you, the way you are learning to let people in despite everything that has taught you not to. You are extraordinary, Eleanor Kendrick, and I would be honored if you would let me court you properly." Eleanor's heart was racing. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself, to refuse before she could be hurt. But a larger part, the part that was growing stronger every day in this desert place, wanted to take the risk. wanted to believe that this man, who had proven himself over and over, might actually be different. "I am falling in love with you too," she admitted, the words terrifying and liberating in equal measure. "It scares me. Everything about this scares me, but I do not want to live in fear anymore. I want to live in hope. So yes, Trent Dawson, you may court me, and we will figure out the rest together." His kiss was gentle, reverent, asking rather than taking. Eleanor leaned into him, and felt the last of her walls begin to crumble. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling, and the future suddenly seemed full of possibility. The courtship was unlike anything Eleanor had experienced before. Trent took her riding through the desert, showing her hidden canyons and ancient rock formations. They picnicked by streams that appeared after the monsoons and disappeared just as quickly. He taught her to rope and helped her learn to ride better, patient with her frustrations and lavish with his praise of her successes. In turn, Eleanor showed him her world. She read him poetry in the evenings, introduced him to novels he had never considered reading, discussed ideas and philosophies late into the night. She made him laugh with her observations about town characters and impressed him with her growing knowledge of desert agriculture. They attended church together on Sundays, sat with each other at town gatherings, became known as a couple in that way that small towns recognize and accept. Mrs. Patterson was delighted, claiming she had known from the start that they were meant for each other. Rusty joked that Trent was happier than he had ever seen him, and threatened to take credit for their relationship since he had helped with the fence. But it was not all easy. There were moments when Eleanor's past trauma would surface, when Trent would move too quickly or speak too sharply, and she would flinch, retreat into old defensive patterns. The first time it happened, Trent was horrified, immediately backing off and apologizing. But Eleanor grabbed his hand. "No," she said firmly. "I am sorry. That was not about you. That was about my father, about Thomas. I am working on it, but sometimes my body reacts before my brain can catch up." "What do you need from me when that happens?" Trent asked, his voice gentle. "Just patience. Just reminding me that you are not them, that you are safe." "Always," he promised. "You are safe with me. Always." They worked through it together, Eleanor learning to voice when she was uncomfortable instead of shutting down, Trent learning to read her signals and adjust accordingly. It was not perfect, but it was real, and that meant everything. As autumn arrived and the brutal heat began to break, Eleanor's garden had become a thriving success. She was selling vegetables to the local restaurants and families, making enough money to support herself comfortably. Her uncle's house was now truly her home, filled with the books Trent had given her, with curtains she had sewn, with furniture she had repaired and refinished. She had friends now. Catherine Harrison, the doctor's daughter, came by regularly to help with harvesting and to chat about life. Mrs. Patterson treated her like a daughter. Even Mr. Cooper at the general store had warmed to her, giving her advice on winter gardening and treating her with respect. One evening in October, as they sat on her porch watching the stars emerge, Trent took her hand. "I have been thinking about the future," he said. "About what I want, what kind of life I want to build." "And what do you want?" Eleanor asked, already knowing but needing to hear him say it. "I want you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life together, combining my ranch with your garden, creating something bigger than either of us could alone. I want children if you want them, and a home full of love and laughter. I want to prove to you every single day for the rest of my life that you made the right choice in trusting me." He stood and pulled her to her feet, then knelt before her on the dusty porch, pulling a simple ring from his pocket. "Eleanor Kendrick, will you marry me?" Eleanor looked down at him, this man who had changed everything, who had shown her what real love looked like through patience and consistency and unwavering support. The fear was still there, would probably always be there in some form, but it was so much smaller than the hope, than the love, than the absolute certainty that this was right. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes, I will marry you." He stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and clung to him. When he set her down, his kiss was deeper, more passionate, full of promise for the future they would build. They were married in November, in the small church with the whole town attending. Eleanor wore a dress she had made herself, cream-colored with delicate embroidery, and carried wildflowers that Catherine had helped her gather. Trent wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle. Dr. Harrison performed the ceremony, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers. The celebration lasted all day, with food and music and dancing, with toasts to the happy couple and jokes about how long everyone had known they would end up together. That night in Trent's house, which was now their house, Eleanor felt a sense of peace she had never experienced before. As Trent held her, gentle and patient and full of love, she finally understood what it meant to be truly safe, truly cherished, truly home. They combined their properties, creating an operation that was both ranch and farm. Trent's cattle thrived, and Eleanor's garden expanded, becoming known throughout the territory for its quality produce. They worked side by side during the days and fell into each other's arms at night, building a partnership that was equal and strong. The first challenge came the following summer, when a severe drought threatened everything they had built. Water was scarce, and many of the smaller operations were failing. Trent and Eleanor made the difficult decision to sell off some of their cattle to reduce the strain on their water sources, and Eleanor focused her garden efforts on drought-resistant crops. It was hard, watching their dreams contract temporarily, but they faced it together. Trent never blamed Eleanor for the water her garden needed, and Eleanor never resented the cattle that drank from their wells. They simply adapted, adjusted, survived. When the rains finally came again, they celebrated by standing in the downpour, holding each other and laughing at the sheer joy of water falling from the sky. That night, as they lay in bed listening to the rain drum on the roof, Eleanor felt Trent's hand on her stomach. "I have been thinking," she said softly, "about children, about what it would mean to bring a child into this world when I am still sometimes afraid of my own past." "You would be an amazing mother," Trent said firmly. "You are the strongest person I know. You have overcome so much. Any child would be lucky to have you. But what if I make mistakes? What if I am not enough? Then we will make mistakes together and learn from them, and you will always be enough, Eleanor, always." She turned to face him in the darkness. "I want to try. I want to build a family with you. I want to prove that love can be different than what I knew growing up." "Then we will," he promised, kissing her forehead. "Whatever happens, we will face it together." Their son was born the following spring, a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas Henry, honoring both of their pasts while creating something new. Trent cried when he held his son for the first time, overcome with emotion, and Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that this child would know only love and safety. Being a mother was harder than Eleanor had imagined, and easier too. The sleepless nights were exhausting, but waking to see Thomas's smile made everything worthwhile. The constant worry was draining, but watching him grow and discover the world was pure joy. And having Trent by her side, sharing the responsibilities and the delights equally, made all the difference. Thomas grew into a curious, energetic toddler who loved helping in the garden and following his father around the ranch. When Eleanor became pregnant again 2 years later, she felt more prepared, more confident in her ability to mother. Their daughter, Sarah Rose, was born in the winter, a tiny thing with a powerful cry. Thomas was initially suspicious of this intruder who demanded so much of his parents' attention, but Trent and Eleanor worked carefully to make him feel included, to help him understand his important role as big brother. The years passed in a blur of busy, joyful chaos. The ranch and garden thrived, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Trent's reputation as a fair and skilled rancher spread, and Eleanor's vegetables were sought after as far away as Phoenix. They hired help as needed, always treating their workers with respect and fair wages. Thomas and Sarah grew, and 2 more children followed, another boy named James and a daughter named Lily. Their house expanded to accommodate the growing family, with rooms added and a bigger kitchen built. It was loud and messy and perfect. Eleanor watched her children grow up knowing safety and love, never flinching from their father's touch, never questioning whether they were wanted. She saw the difference in them, the confidence and joy that came from being raised without fear, and she knew that she had broken the cycle. Her past would not define their future. Trent proved every day that trust was not misplaced in him. He was steady, present, loving through all the challenges that life brought. When times were hard, he never took his frustration out on his family. When times were good, he shared the joy generously. He was exactly who he had promised to be, from that first day when he said trust should be earned, and then set about earning it every single day thereafter. One evening, when the children were tucked in bed and they sat together on the porch as they had done for years, Eleanor took Trent's hand. "Do you remember when we first met? When I told you I did not trust easily? I remember. You were so defensive, so ready to fight. I was not sure you would ever let me in." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Of you, of this place, of the possibility that I might hope for something better and have it destroyed. But you were patient. You showed me through action what your words meant. You earned my trust, and then you protected it like the precious thing it is." "It is the greatest honor of my life," Trent said seriously. "Your trust, your love, the family we have built, I never take it for granted, not for a single moment. I know you do not. That is why it is so safe to give." Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder, looking out at the land they had built their lives on. "I used to think the desert was harsh and unforgiving, but you taught me to see the beauty in it. You taught me that strength and gentleness can coexist, that vulnerability is not weakness, that love is not a weapon but a gift." "You taught me those things too," Trent replied, wrapping his arm around her. "You showed me that healing is possible, that our past does not have to define our future. You showed me what real courage looks like. It is not the absence of fear, but the choice to love anyway." They sat in comfortable silence, the desert night wrapping around them. In the distance, a coyote called, and somewhere closer, one of the horses whinnied softly. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams children dream. Eleanor thought about the woman she had been when she arrived in Wickenburg, broken and defensive and so very alone. She thought about how far she had traveled, not just in miles but in her heart. And she thought about the man beside her, who had seen through her armor to the woman underneath, and had chosen to love her anyway, to wait for her, to earn her trust through patience and consistency and unwavering devotion. "I love you," she said simply, the words still feeling like magic even after all these years. "I love you too," Trent replied, kissing the top of her head. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that. Forever, Eleanor, you have my word." And his word, she had learned, was something she could always trust. It was the foundation their entire life was built on, as solid and enduring as the desert itself, as constant as the stars that watched over them night after night. Years continued to pass in their Arizona home. Thomas grew into a young man who combined his father's steadiness with his mother's determination, taking over more and more of the ranch operations. Sarah became a teacher, starting a small school in town for the growing number of children. James showed a talent for working with horses that amazed everyone, and Lily inherited her mother's love of plants, experimenting with new crops and techniques in the expanding garden. Trent's hair turned gray at the temples, and Eleanor's hands showed the wear of years of work, but their love only deepened with time. They became the couple that younger people looked to as an example, the ones who proved that love could last, that partnership could thrive, that happiness was possible even in the harsh realities of frontier life. They added more rooms to their house over the years to accommodate visiting children and, eventually, grandchildren. The porch where they had spent so many evenings expanded, with a swing that Trent built where they would sit together, watching the sun set over the land they had built their lives on. Eleanor sometimes thought back to those early days, to her fear and distrust, to the walls she had built so carefully around her heart. She thought about how easily she might have refused Trent's help, might have pushed him away permanently, might have lived her whole life alone and convinced it was safer that way. The thought made her shudder. "What are you thinking about?" Trent asked one evening, noticing her expression. "How different my life could have been," Eleanor admitted. "If you had not been patient, if I had not been brave enough to try, if either of us had given up." "But we did not give up," Trent reminded her. "You chose courage over fear. I chose patience over frustration. And together, we built something neither of us could have created alone." "The best things in life require risk," Eleanor mused. "I used to think safety meant avoiding risk entirely, but real safety is not the absence of danger. It is knowing you have someone who will face that danger with you, who will protect you when you need it and step back when you do not, who will celebrate your victories and comfort your defeats." "That is what we promised each other," Trent said, "through all of it together. And we kept that promise." Eleanor smiled, taking his hand and interlacing their fingers, a gesture so familiar after decades together that it felt like breathing. "We did. We kept every promise." Their eldest son, Thomas, married a girl from Phoenix and brought her to the ranch, where she fit into the family as if she had always belonged. Their first grandchild was born, a squalling red-faced baby girl they named Eleanor, and the new grandmother cried when she held her tiny namesake. "I never thought I would have this," Eleanor whispered to Trent that night. "A family that loves each other, a legacy that is built on joy instead of pain. It seems impossible sometimes." "Nothing is impossible," Trent replied, though his voice was rough with emotion. "Not when you fight for it the way we did. Not when you refuse to let the past poison the present." More grandchildren followed, filling their home with noise and laughter and sticky hands. Trent would hold the babies with the same gentle confidence he had shown with his own children, and Eleanor would watch him and fall in love all over again. This man, this cowboy who had once stood in the street and calmly talked down a drunk with a gun, who had offered help without expectations, who had said trust should be earned, and then spent a lifetime earning it. The town of Wickenburg grew over the years. The railroad came through, bringing more people and more opportunities. The rough frontier settlement transformed into a proper town with a school building, a library, even a small hospital where Dr. Harrison's daughter Catherine now worked. But through all the changes, the core of community remained. People still helped each other, still gathered for celebrations, still understood that survival in the desert required cooperation and trust. Eleanor and Trent became elders of the community, the ones people came to for advice and mediation. They settled disputes with wisdom, helped young couples starting out with loans and guidance, and shared the hard-won knowledge they had accumulated over decades. One afternoon in early spring, as Eleanor worked in her garden with her granddaughter Eleanor helping, the little girl asked a question. "Grandmother, were you always happy?" Eleanor paused in her weeding, considering her answer carefully. "No, sweetheart, I was not always happy. When I was young, I experienced things that hurt me very much. For a long time, I thought that was just how life was. I thought everyone would hurt me eventually, so I tried not to let anyone get close." "What changed?" Little Eleanor's eyes were wide and curious. "Your grandfather changed," Eleanor said simply. "He showed me through his actions that not everyone is cruel, that some people keep their promises, that love does not have to hurt. And slowly, over time, I learned to trust him. That trust opened the door to everything else good in my life." "So trust is important." "Trust is everything," Eleanor replied. "But it is also precious. It should be given carefully to people who prove through their actions that they deserve it. Your grandfather earned my trust by being consistent, by respecting my boundaries, by showing me every single day that he meant what he said." The little girl nodded seriously, then returned to her childish task of collecting interesting rocks from the garden bed. Eleanor watched her, this child who would never know the fear and pain that had shaped her grandmother's early life. This child who was growing up surrounded by love and safety, who would have the confidence to trust, because she had never been given reason not to. That evening, as she recounted the conversation to Trent, he smiled. "You gave her good advice. Trust is everything. It is the foundation of all relationships, all community, all love." "You taught me that," Eleanor said. "I had to learn it from you." "We taught each other," Trent corrected. "You taught me that patience is not passive, that it is an active choice to keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that something good is possible. You taught me that healing is not linear, that there are setbacks and struggles, but that does not mean progress is not being made. You taught me what real strength looks like." They held each other close, two people who had lived full lives together, who had weathered storms literal and metaphorical, who had built something lasting and good. As they grew older, their roles shifted. The children and grandchildren took over more of the daily operations, and Eleanor and Trent found themselves with time to simply be together. They took rides through the desert, visiting old favorite spots and discovering new ones. They read together in the evenings, discussed current events, shared memories and dreams. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration. The house overflowed with children and grandchildren, with food and music and joy. Speeches were made, toasting the couple who had built this legacy of love. Thomas stood and raised his glass. "To my parents," he said, his voice carrying through the crowded room, "who taught us that love is a choice you make every day, that trust is earned through actions. That family is not just about blood, but about showing up for each other no matter what. Thank you for giving us a foundation of love to build our own lives on. Thank you for showing us what is possible when two people commit to each other completely." Everyone cheered and drank, and Eleanor felt tears streaming down her face. Trent pulled her close, whispering in her ear, "Look at what we built. Look at all of this love, all of this joy. It started with us taking a chance on each other." "Best chance I ever took," Eleanor whispered back. "Mine too," Trent agreed. "Mine too." The party continued long into the night, with the grandchildren eventually falling asleep in piles around the house and the adults talking and laughing and remembering. Stories were told about Trent and Eleanor's early days, about the first time Eleanor came to a town gathering, about the fence repair that had brought them together, about the wedding that the whole town attended. Later, much later, when everyone had finally gone home or to bed, Trent and Eleanor sat on their porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the cool night air. The stars stretched overhead in their familiar patterns, and the desert was quiet except for the usual nighttime sounds. "If you could go back," Trent asked softly, "and tell that frightened woman who arrived in Wickenburg what her life would become, what would you say?" Eleanor thought about it for a long moment. "I would tell her to be brave. That the fear is real and valid, but that it does not have to control her forever. I would tell her that trust is terrifying, but also the most beautiful thing she will ever experience. I would tell her that there is a man waiting who will change everything, who will earn her trust and protect her heart and love her exactly as she deserves to be loved." She paused. "What would you tell the man you were?" "I would tell him to be patient," Trent replied. "That the woman he meets will be worth every moment of uncertainty and effort. That earning her trust will be the greatest achievement of his life. That the love they build together will sustain him through everything that comes. I would tell him that every day he chooses her will be the right choice." They sat in silence, rocking gently on the swing that had witnessed countless conversations, countless quiet moments of connection. The desert stretched around them, harsh and beautiful, the place where they had both found redemption and hope. "I am so grateful," Eleanor said finally, "for all of it. For the courage to leave Boston, for stumbling into this town, for your patience, for every moment that led us here. I am grateful for our family, our life, our love. I am grateful that I was brave enough to trust you. And I am grateful you gave me the chance to earn it," Trent replied. "I am grateful for every day we have had together, and for every day we still have ahead." They sat together on that porch until the stars began to fade with approaching dawn. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of love and trust on the foundation of patience and earned devotion, who had proven that healing was possible, that happiness was achievable, that love could be everything it was supposed to be when given to the right person at the right time. And when the sun finally rose over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they rose together to face another day, still hand in hand after all these years, still choosing each other, still building on the promise they had made so long ago to face life together, in trust and love forever.